The National Library of Mexico is located in the south of Mexico City, in the heart of the university city of the National Autonomous University of Mexico. The architectural complex where it is located is known as the Bibliographic Unit. It houses both the National Library of Mexico and the National Periodicals Library of Mexico, as well as the Bibliographical Research Institute, which administers both. The Bibliographic Unit consists of two sections, the Contemporary Collection and the Reserved Collection, where the oldest printed material is preserved, as well as manuscripts, archives, and miscellaneous documents. These two sections are linked by a passageway, known as the Tunnel of Time. Various sculptures adorn the interior, such as Erzua's, the symbol of the sciences and humanities, or Federico Silva's Vino. There are also busts of eminent personalities, such as the writer Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz and former President Benito Juárez. It was Juárez who issued the decree for the foundation of the library on November 30, 1867. He also gave its first headquarters, the old Temple of St. Augustine, in the historic center of Mexico City. Previously, there had been several failed attempts to establish the library in 1833, 1846, and 1857. There was also, during the French intervention, a project of creating an imperial library, which turned out in the removal from the country of collections and books acquired for this purpose and their subsequent auctioning in Europe. The necessary renovation work for converting a church into a library began in 1867 and was completed in 1884. The opening ceremony was held on the 2nd of April, 1884. The former president, Manuel González, attended the ceremony. Speeches were delivered and poems were recited, and a symphonic hymn of the library was performed. In 1893, the library opened its night service in the chapel of the Third Order to meet the reading needs of the working classes. The former President Porfirio Díaz and his cabinet attended the inauguration ceremony, as well as the director of the library for almost 30 years, José María Vigil. In 1914, the law of the National University was issued. It listed the organizations belonging to this institution, mostly faculties and institutes, and among them it was the National Library of Mexico. The organic law of the university, issued in 1929, ratified this assignment. From that time onwards, the National Library of Mexico has been under the custody of the National Autonomous University of Mexico. In 1950, when the construction of University City began, it was envisaged to move the National Library of Mexico to the building today known as the Central Library. At last, this proposal was rejected. However, traces of this attempt remain on one of the beautiful murals that embellish this building, on which the initials BN and HN are inscribed, which stand for Biblioteca Nacional and Hemeroteca Nacional. In 1967, the Bibliographical Research Institute was created as a part of the university, and it was stipulated that the National Library and the National Periodicals Library of Mexico would be under its administration. In 1979, the current headquarters of the National Library of Mexico was inaugurated. Thus began the transfer of the library's collections from the historic center to the south of Mexico City. The Bibliographic Unit was designed by the architect Orso Núñez, who was also responsible for the construction of the surrounding buildings, cinemas, theaters, and concert halls. The architectural ensemble is known as the University Cultural Center. Initially, the Bibliographic Unit housed only the library's contemporary collection, while the reserved collection remained for a few more years in the old church of St. Augustine. It was not until 1992 that the architectural section where the library's reserved collection is located was inaugurated. Finally, in 1995, all the books had been moved to the new location, which meant the end of an era. St. Augustine's building, the temple that held the library for over a century, was closed. It underwent a process of architectural intervention in order to reinforce its structure. Regarding the future of the National Library of Mexico, there are plans to build a documentary preservation center outside Mexico City, in Juriquilla, Querétaro, which is 2.5 hours away from the city. A significant part of its collection will be transferred there. Thus, it will prevent the Bibliographic Unit from becoming overcrowded, and it will meet the needs of storage space for the decades to come. There are also plans for the library's original home, the former church of St. Augustine. The building has undergone an extensive restoration process, which is in its final stage. In its adjacent chapel, better known as the Chapel of the Third Order, the National Library will house its Tiflological collection, a reference room for digital collections, the National Press, and a venue for academic teaching and outreach activities. Thus, the history of the National Library of Mexico encounters the present time, enlivened by the lessons of its past and impatient to meet the challenges of its future.